So we're going to start talking about the early years of the war. Now these videos are just going to provide an overview of sort of major events that are occurring. They're not going to be super specific. So in class we're going to talk about specific events. We're going to look at particular documents and how to interpret what was going on, kind of the behind the scenes stuff to the Civil War. But in this video, we're just going to start talking about the actual war. The two vocab terms are the Monitor and the Merrimack. Now we're going to start with July 1861. The first Battle of Bull Run occurs, and General McDowell was attacked. Correction, attacked. There we go. A slightly smaller Confederate force led by General Beauregard. You should write both of these men down in your list of Union and Confederate generals. It's very important that you know and can identify who was with the Union and who was with the Confederacy, because both are going to say General somebody. So you need to make certain that you know the difference. Now, the Yankees were able, in the first Battle of Bull Run, to push back the rebels. But then reinforcements under General Jackson came and forced the Union lines to break. Now, on top of all of this, the Confederates surged forward with an unearthly scream that they would later call the Rebel Yell. Now, Northern soldiers panicked when they heard this scream. They thought that the rebels were demons, and they literally dropped their guns and retreated. So these are some images from the first Battle of Bull Run. I want you to notice the tree in the second picture. Off to the right, that's what war does. It's very clear to see how the tree was almost completely destroyed by cannon fire. The Civil War is the first war where we have photographs. So I'm going to try to show you some of those. We're going to look at some more in class and see how that would impact society by looking at these photographs. Now, after the Battle of Bull Run, this was absolute shock in the North. And the Northerners started to understand that the war was going to be long, difficult, and very expensive. President Lincoln immediately called for more troops, and he got that. 1 million men volunteered for a 3-year term. 1 million men. Lincoln also decided that McDowell maybe shouldn't be in charge, and so he appointed a new general, General George McClellan, to lead the Army of the East and to organize the troops. This is General McClellan. If you've ever heard of the McClellan saddle, it was used by the cavalry. It was named after General McClellan. We're going to talk a lot about McClellan. Now, one of the North's primary goals in the West was to gain control of the Mississippi rivers and the Tennessee rivers. Remember, the reason for this is to split the Confederacy. So for a little bit after the Battle of Bull Run, generals were training. McClellan's taken over. He's training all the troops. And the action shifts to the west. So we're going to look at February 1862. Union forces under that man, General U.S. Grant, captured Fort Henry on the Tennessee River and Fort Donelson on the Cumberland River, securing the Tennessee River and opening a path for Union troops to march into Tennessee, Mississippi, and Alabama. At the same time, they drove the rebels out of Kentucky. So that's a huge, huge victory for General Grant. And keep his name, if the name is in yellow, you need to write it down. General Grant is a Union leader. We will talk about him again. Now let's move into March 8th and 9th. And we have to look at another aspect. We've talked about the East, we've talked about the West. Now we need to look at C. Because remember, Lincoln's plan, part of this plan was to blockade the South and prevent supplies from getting in and out of the South. Now, Lincoln had ordered that, but we just simply did not have enough ships to completely do that. So there were blockade runners or rebel ships that were sailing in and out of southern ports. Now, the North built more ships. They could do it quicker and more efficiently because of the amount of industrial factories that they had in the North. And they were able to cause huge damage with the blockades. In fact, they reduced southern trade by as much as 2/3. Now, where is all this fighting going, this blockading? Well, the South is not going to let the blockade go unchallenged. Literally, it would have been their death, their destruction, to not challenge this blockade. So they salvaged a ship called the Merrimack, vocabulary term. It's an abandoned Union ship covered with thick iron plates and used by the South. It was covered with thick iron plates. So it's still a wood ship, but it has iron plates on it. It was renamed the Virginian, and I'm certain if you read Southern textbooks, it's not the Monitor and the Merrimack, but it's probably the Monitor versus the Virginian. But they used this ship. Now, it attacked a group of ships off the coast of Virginia, and northern ships simply could not damage this ironclad ship. So the fear was that it would attack Washington, D.C. Well, the North had already built its own ironclad ship called the Monitor, and the Monitor rushed forward to fight the Merrimack, the Virginian. Monitor is the North's ironclad ship. Now, on March 9th, the two ships exchanged fire, but they can't sink each other. But what it did do is the southern Merrimack was kept in harbor. And so it couldn't go out and torture all the other Union ships that weren't ironclad. And it also marked a new age in naval warfare. The first time that we have a battle between two metal-covered ships. It's the first time in history. So, meanwhile, in March, General McClellan is training the Army of the Potomac. He's worried about his troops being ready. He obviously saw that was a challenge. And he worried about the size of the rebel army. And he finally, at one point in March, decides that they are ready for action. And their first goal is to capture Richmond. Now, McClellan moved his army by ship just off the coast of Richmond. But he constantly allowed time and opportunities to pass. Lincoln wanted McClellan to get moving, attack something, do something. But he refused. And unfortunately, this delay led to the rebels preparing an extreme defense around Richmond. Literally, McClellan could see the town of Richmond, Virginia at this point. So he has done nothing by the end of March 1862.